touch upon is the link between eating disorders and depression. Hi, my name is Tommy Kelly. Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Today what I want to touch upon is the link between eating disorders and depression. Just to give you a little bit of background here, there's a little study done by the Pittsburgh Medical Center. They said that 24% of bipolar patients met the criteria for eating disorders. An estimated 44% had trouble controlling their eating. They said as many as half of all patients diagnosed with binge eating disorder had a history of depression, and they said according to the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, binge eating affects 3% of adults in the United States, making it the most common eating disorder. Like I say, depression also plagues many people with anorexia. Another common eating disorder, people with anorexia fail to eat enough food to maintain obviously their healthy weight. This can result, obviously can be very, very tragic, as we all know. Studies show that anorexics are 50 more times more likely than the general population to die as a result of suicide. So like I say, it's got the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, and that's one thing I want to convey. So basically I've wrote a lot of things down here, the links between depression and eating disorders. So like I say, depression may lead to eating disorders, but there's also evidence that eating disorders can result in depression. Being severely underweight and malnourished, which is obviously common in eating disorders, can cause psychological changes that are known to negatively affect mood changes. This is done by Lisa Linefield, PhD and Associate Professor of Clinical Psychology at the Argosy University in Arlington, who specialises in eating disorders. Like I say, depression in people with eating disorders typically has its own unique features, according to Ira M. Sacker, MD, an eating disorder specialist in Langone Medical Center at New York University, an author of Regaining Yourself, Understanding and Conquering Eating Disorder Identity, which is a great book. People who develop eating disorders feel as though they are not good enough. They become obsessed with perfectionism, that perfectionism begins to focus on what they eat. But underlying is obviously depression and anxiety. Often patients suffered a lot of emotional trauma. People with binge eating disorder are frequently overweight or obese. For instance, this can obviously lead them to feeling chronically depressed about the way they look, basically. After succumbing to an episode of a binge and things like that, they may feel disgusted with themselves, worsening their depression. So that's something we can all relate to in eating disorders. Basically, to determine if depression is part of an eating disorder, doctors use a well-tested battery of questions that tease out any common symptoms of depression. Basically, these include feelings of sadness or unhappiness, loss of interest in activities that once were obviously pleasurable to you, loss of libido, which is obviously your sex drive and things like that, irritability and anger, sleep problems, which we can all relate to, the insomnia and things like that, and basically your loss of appetite, which is obviously very, very common in eating disorders, obviously because of the shrinkage of your stomach and not getting those feelings of nourishment to your brain. Diagnosing serious depression is relatively easy, like I say. Basically finding an effective treatment combined with depression and eating disorders can be a really challenging aspect though. Treatment approaches for depression and eating disorders. Two different approaches have been shown to obviously have helped with some patients. One approach is the use of antidepressant medication or mood stabilisers. In a 2001 study of 35 patients with anorexia who had managed to eat enough to achieve a healthy weight. For instance, the antidepressant Prozac, which is another name for fluoxetine, was shown to reduce the risk of the relapse. For binge eating disorder, two different types of medication are sometimes prescribed by doctors: antidepressants and anticonvulsant drugs called Topamax or Topiramate. These drugs have been shown to reduce binging, either alone or in combination. Unfortunately, like I say, over time many patients can relapse, but like we all know, eating disorder recovery is not linear, you've got bumps in the road, we all know that. Another approach is cognitive behavioural therapy, or CBT for short. The goal is to change the way people think about food and eating to encourage healthier eating behaviours. This is something that I've actually do quite a lot with my eating disorder specialist. It's a Mosley mantra, which is the very same thing. But I say one CBT method is called dissidence therapy. People with eating disorders who have become obsessed with the idea that they must be extremely thin or attractive are encouraged to reject the unattainable image in favour of a more realistic ideal. Studies, like I say, obviously show that this approach can significantly reduce symptoms of bulimia, either specifically binging and vomiting in some patients as well. Another approach is obviously success in encouraging some patients to adopt healthier eating habits. This approach uses a combination of educational about health choices and obviously techniques for monitoring change, such as keeping food diaries when appropriate. Patients are encouraged to become more physically active as well. Evidence shows that CBT can be effective. In a 2003 study of 33 patients with anorexia nervosa, only 22% of the received CBT relapsed over the following year, compared to 53% of patients who received nutritional counselling only. Let's say CBT has also been shown to help people control binge eating. In a study published in 2010, researchers at the Wesleyan University in Connecticut tested an 8-session course of CBT in 123 patients with binge eating disorders. The therapy helped patients restrain their binge eating behaviour and reduce their symptoms of depression as well. Another approach is obviously success in encouraging some patients to adopt healthier eating habits. This approach uses a combination of educational about health choices and obviously techniques for monitoring change, such as keeping food diaries when appropriate. Patients are encouraged to become more physically active as well. So basically as well, tailoring treatments to your needs. Which approach is obviously best is something that we all kind of really want to know. Like I say, both medication and cognitive behavioural therapy have distinct advantages and obviously disadvantages as well. Experts could say medication is easy to take. Effects typically showing up relatively quickly. It's not something I have. I believe that basically therapy is the best way of doing it. I feel that medication just basically masks the eating disorder, but the studies have shown that it does help a lot of people in the early stages. But for me, getting a good relationship with the food rather than focusing on the medication basically masking the disorder is the best way of doing it. Like I say, cognitive behavioural therapy, on the other hand, may take longer to work obviously. Most patients require 3 to 6 months therapy, but CBT has the advantage of offering a more reliable long-term lasting cure, which is something I just touched upon there. Like I say, when people stop taking medications, they are more likely to have a relapse than what they've had done cognitive behavioural therapy. The problem with medication is that once you stop taking it, it's gone kind of thing. So with CBT, you can permanently change the way people perceive themselves and obviously the world around them. That kind of perpetual change can be especially helpful with eating disorders combined with depression. So it's just like I was saying, basically the best way of doing it is through your cognitive behavioural therapy, getting a good relationship with the food, not focusing upon the medications. It's just masking the disorder. Especially for bulimia and binge eating, a combination of CBT and medication obviously can definitely work best. In a study of 30 patients with binge eating disorder, for instance, at the Sacco Hospital in Milan, Italy, found that these receiving both CBT and a combination of drugs, including sertraline and Topamax, reduced their binge eating behaviours and obviously lost weight as well. Tailoring treatments to patients is essential for, like I say, some people are repetitive to medication. Others need intensive nutritional counselling, others need obviously treatment in a matter of trial and error basically as well. So like I say, another thing we want to touch upon is finding help for eating disorders and depression. Like I say, there's no magic bullet for eating disorders coupled with depression. Even intensive research treatment programs have a high drop rate as well, so patients who do well over a long period of time can relapse, and that is one thing that we all want to touch upon, is that eating disorders are not linear. Recoveries get bumps in the road, but it's every day waking up, choosing recovery again, battling on, that's you winning. Still, as like I say, there's a lot they can obviously do to treat underlying depression and change the way people think about themselves, and obviously the relationship to food. Like I say, the first step is obviously finding a psychiatrist or a psychologist with extensive experience and obviously treating your eating disorder. After that, success basically depends on you as a patient, basically your willingness to change and actually choose recovery, because like I say, eating disorders are not a choice, but recovery is. I hope this has been really insightful, guys, and if you would like to know any more about this for more eating disorder videos, please let me know. Anything I can do to help, I will do. And remember what this little guy at the end of the video says: I love you so much. Remember, guys, binge on life, purge negativity and starve guilty feelings. Speak to you all soon and love you so much.